The country has a total of 15 presidents who head the Philippine government. It is few compared to the 44 presidents of the United States. The Philippine presidency was led by Emilio Aguinaldo, the first, the youngest, and the longest-lived Philippine president who played an important role during the Philippines Revolution against Spain.
Ito kay Aguinaldo, ang talagang caretaker ng mga memorabilia nila ang NHI since the the mansion, Aguinaldo Mansion, is under the care of the NHI, National Historical Institute. So humihiram na lang kami ng mga memorabilia sa kanila. Although, some we bought for the museum talaga.
Use ni Aguinaldo to?
Yeah. Saka yung tungkod niya, maliit na si Aguinaldo. Medyo malaki lang dito sa maniki na to.
Aguinaldo was followed by Manuel L. Quezon, the first president who was elected through a national election and the first incumbent to secure re-election.
Yeah. The bust is kay Guillermo Tolentino, yung national artist. Actually, kopya lang yan. The original nasa Heroes Hall sa Palasyo.
Ah, okay.
So, pinamoldehan nila tapos ginawang ganyan. This is by Tolentino also. Tapos yung inaugural speech niya, this one he wore as parang commander-in-chief of the Philippine Army.
The Commonwealth government of Quezon was interrupted by the Japanese invasion. This time, Jose P. Laurel became the president of the popularly known Puppet Republic.
Quezon was inaugurated November 15, 1935. Si Laurel, October 14, 1943. Parang nag-overlap yung terms of presidency nila. Kasi during the Japanese occupation, nasa state si Quezon in exile. So, merong government dito, which was a Japanese-sponsored government, which was headed by Jose P. Laurel. So, bali dalawang presidente yung nag-overlap, si Quezon and Laurel, and then nung namatay si Quezon, si Osmeña pumalit, nag-overlap din sila ni Laurel. So, we have the inaugural program, pati yung speech.
Founder of the Nacionalista Party and a vice president of Quezon in Commonwealth government, Sergio Osmeña rose to the presidency upon Quezon's death.
And nung namatay si Quezon, siya yung pumalit. And noong 1946, he ran against Rojas but he didn't win. So he's the only president who was not really elected as president. Although noong 1941, nung elections noong 1941, kasi ang original sa 1935 Constitution was 6 years without re-election. Nagkaroon ng charter change in 1938-39. Nangyari, naging 4 years with re-election. So, a president can only serve for 8 years. So, noong 1941 elections, ang bali sinasabi ng mga kandidato for president is, you will also elect the vice president na magsiserve as president 2 years from now. Kasi mag-8 years na sila eh. So, ang term dapat ni Quezon was from November 15, 1935 until November 15, 1943. And after that, si Osmeña yung magiging presidente. But since those were extraordinary times dahil gera nga, so the US Congress gave permission to President Quezon to exceed yung legal term. So, naghintay muna with the permission of Osmeña, syempre. So, naghintay muna si Osmeña. Nung namatay si Quezon, saka siya pumalit as president.
After Osmeña, Manuel Rojas followed. He was the first president and has the shortest term of the Independent Republic of the Philippines.
So, Rojas was the last president of the Philippine Commonwealth and the first president of the Independent Philippine Republic. So, he served as president from May 28, 1946 hanggang mamatay siya noong April 15, 1948. So, he ran against Osmeña for the presidency noong 1946. And then, nung namatay siya, ang pumalit sa kanya, yung vice president niya, si Quirino.
Okay, this is the dad ba or the lolo?
Lolo.
Of Senator?
Of Senator Rojas. Yeah.
Wow, there's a resemblance, no?
Yeah, actually. May mga shots si Mar na kamukha talaga niya si lolo niya.
And this is the handwriting?
Yes. Facsimile lang yan.
Facsimile. Ano siya? Ano yung sulat na yan?
It's his notes for a speech.
Elpidio Quirino's fate is similar with Rojas. After the death of the incumbent President Rojas, Quirino, who was then the vice president, rose to presidency.
Si Quirino ang pumalit kay President Rojas no April 17, 1948, 2 days pagkatapos matay ni Rojas from a heart attack sa Clark. And then in 1949, he ran for election as president and nanalo siya against Jose P. Laurel. And then in 1953, lumaban siya against Magsaysay and then he lost. Yes.
Okay. So ano yung mga... May nabasa kasi ako na sinasabi, parang the reason why he lost daw against Magsaysay is because of alleged corruption.
Yeah, ang sinasabi nila yung Golden Arinola at saka yung 5,000 peso bed. Well, they explained it na parang ang nangyari noon is it's just for auditing purposes. So, kailangan i-jack up yung price, parang estimated price. It doesn't mean na yun talaga yung price noon. Yeah.
Okay. Meron kayong, sa kaya makikita itong...
Wala. It doesn't exist.
It doesn't exist.
Yung Arinola doesn't exist.
Okay, the bed?
The bed, well, wala na sa Malacanang ngayon. Pero, merong bed, pero it's not that magarbo or something. Yeah. Yes. And I think we have a campaign poster in 1949.
Talaga?
Yeah. Pati yung comics, that's a 1949 election comic.
The 7th president and the 3rd president of the Republic of the Philippines is Ramon Magsaysay, who is known as Man of the Masses. His death in a plane crash made Carlos P. Garcia the next president. Garcia, who is known for his Filipino First policy, succeeded Magsaysay and became the 8th president of the Philippines. After Garcia's term, he was succeeded by his Vice President Diosdado Macapagal, who defeated him in re-election bid for the presidency. He is known as a champion of the common man and became the 9th president of the Philippines. After Macapagal, Ferdinand Marcos rose to presidency and became the 10th president of the Philippines. He led the country in authoritarian regime for 20 years.
As of the 21st of this month, I signed Proclamation number 1081, placing the entire Philippines under martial law.
The People Power movement drove Marcos into exile and installed Corazon Aquino as the new president and later became known as the icon of democracy.
As President of the Philippines,
preserve and defend its fundamental law,
preserve and defend its fundamental law,
execute its just laws,
execute its just law,
do justice to every man,
do justice to every man,
and consecrate myself
myself
to the service of the nation.
to the service of the nation.
She was the first woman who held the office, which made her the 11th president of the Philippines. She was also the first popularly and democratically elected female president and head of state in Asia. After Aquino, Fidel V. Ramos, who was then serving as the cabinet of President Aquino, became the 12th President of the Philippines. During his term, he was admired by many for revitalizing the international confidence in the Philippine economy. After Ramos, Joseph Estrada, who was then the Vice President, rose to presidency. Estrada became the 13th President of the Philippines and the only president to have resigned from office.
Ako si Joseph Orozco Estrada ay taimtim na nanunumpa bilang Pangulo ng Republika ng Pilipinas.
After leaving Malacanang Palace, Gloria Macapagal Arroyo, who was then serving as Vice President to Estrada, became the country's second female president and the 14th President of the Philippines.
Gloria Macapagal Arroyo, Vice President of the Philippines, do solemnly swear that I will faithfully and conscientiously fulfill
as President of the Philippines.
my duties as President of the Philippines.
She's the second longest serving presidential term for 9 years next to Marcos. The latest president is President-elect Noynoy Aquino, the son of late President Corazon Aquino.
The newly elected President of the Republic of the Philippines.
Like any profession, the president must also pass the criteria or qualifications set by the Constitution of the Republic of the Philippines for proper governance. According to Article 7, Section 2 of the Constitution of the Republic of the Philippines, in order to be a Philippine president, one must be a natural-born citizen of the Philippines, a registered voter, able to read and write, at least 40 years of age on the day of election, and a resident of the Philippines for at least 10 years immediately preceding such election. In terms of election, the election returns for president certified by the Board of Canvassers of each province or city must be transmitted to the Congress, directed to the Senate President. After receiving the certificate of canvass, not later than 30 days after election, the Senate President must open all the certificates in the presence of the Senate and the House of Representatives in joint public session. The person having the highest number of votes shall be proclaimed elected.
Congratulations to the newly elected President of the Republic of the Philippines.
In terms of office, it is written in the Section 4 of Article 7 that the President must be elected by the voting people for a 6-year term, and this will begin in the afternoon of June 30 and will end the same afternoon of June 30, completing the 6-year term. For the inauguration 2010, this is Monette Lamson reporting.